This is also a time of change for my family.
King Charles had entered the private meeting, expecting a routine discussion about the monarchy's upcoming ceremonial calendar. Instead, Queen Camilla placed a sealed proposal before him and made a demand so extraordinary that he could not answer immediately. She wanted Sophie removed from one of the crown's most protected positions, and she wanted the authority transferred directly to herself. The king's hand froze above the table. What followed was not merely disagreement, it was a challenge to the boundaries of royal power. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Charles dismissed the final aide and waited until his private study door at Clarence House clicked shut. Only the king, Camilla, and Sophie remained. Clarence House was one of the monarch's principal London homes, often used for sensitive work away from Buckingham Palace. That made the silence heavier. No secretary remained to soften the words or redirect the conversation. Camilla moved first. She pushed the proposal closer and asked Charles to remove Sophie as guardian of the crown household and appoint the queen consort instead. The guardian was a confidential ceremonial officer created to protect royal continuity during an emergency. Sophie's limited powers covered private regalia, emergency representation, and sensitive family protocol. The role preserved the king's written wishes during illness or absence. Sophie felt the betrayal before Charles spoke. Camilla had praised her loyalty weeks earlier and privately promised that the position was safe. Now the trusted confidant heard the same woman ask for her service to be erased with one signature. She remained composed, but her hands tightened around the chair. Charles lowered the pages and asked whether his wife understood what she was demanding. Camilla did not retreat. The Queen said the office required greater seniority and revealed that she had already discussed the transfer with 2 household officials. Her recorded briefing notes, she explained, contained their support. The admission changed everything. This was no sudden request. Preparations had begun before the monarch was consulted. The king turned another page and stopped. A proposed announcement date appeared near the bottom, only 48 hours away. Charles stared at it, then at Camilla. Someone expected immediate approval, or intended to make refusal look like a palace crisis. Sophie watched his expression harden. Charles closed the proposal without signing it. He asked Camilla to leave and told Sophie to remain. The queen consort rose without protest, but her confidence had begun to crack. As the door closed, the king leaned toward Sophie. "What does she believe this position gives you that I have never been told?" The answer could destroy everything. Behind the formal language of titles and authority were 3 people confronting entirely different fears. Charles feared losing control of a monarchy already under pressure. Camilla feared remaining permanently outside the institution's most trusted inner circle. Sophie feared that years of quiet loyalty could be erased by a single signature. None of them entered the conflict emotionally untouched. The position may have appeared ceremonial, but to each of them, it represented trust, survival, and the question of who truly belonged. Charles waited until the silence had settled before asking Sophie why Camilla wanted the office so badly. The trusted confidant did not answer at once. She had earned the role after years of difficult engagements, family emergencies, and duties others preferred to avoid. She never used those moments to seek attention, which was exactly why the king trusted her when calm mattered more than applause. Sophie finally looked at him and admitted that losing the position would not be the deepest wound. What hurt was knowing Camilla had worked behind her back. The queen had praised her loyalty, thanked her privately, and assured her that the appointment was secure. Now every kind word felt uncertain. Her voice stayed level, but her fingers tightened around the chair. Charles understood the pain, because he had depended on Sophie during some of the monarchy's most fragile periods. She handled sensitive work without turning service into a personal campaign. That made her valuable, but it also placed her inside a circle Camilla believed should belong to the monarch's wife. Camilla carried that resentment into her own apartments. She told a close aide during a private recorded conversation that she was tired of being treated as publicly senior, but privately restricted. The Queen Consort believed the forbidden position proved that the family still accepted her title more easily than they accepted her authority. To her, the office was not merely ceremonial. It was a test of whether she truly belonged. Charles rose and crossed to a locked cabinet. He removed the original appointment instrument, the formal paper granting Sophie the role and defining its limits, then placed it before her. The king pointed to one sentence. No reigning consort could hold the office because the guardian might need to advise independently during the sovereign's illness or absence. Sophie read the line again, then revealed something she had dismissed before. Camilla had questioned her twice during the previous month about emergency regalia procedures. Private regalia meant ceremonial objects kept under restricted royal control. At the time, she assumed the Queen was only curious. Charles no longer believed that explanation. He closed the document and asked whether Camilla wanted prestige or access to something only the guardian could reach. That question pulled Sophie back to one buried palace memory she could no longer ignore. The conflict did not begin inside Charles's study. Its true origin lay 6 weeks earlier, during a private rehearsal at Windsor Castle, when one ceremonial request was denied in front of the wrong people. At the time, the exchange lasted less than 2 minutes. No voices were raised, and no public scene followed. Yet that quiet refusal wounded Camilla's pride, alerted Sophie to a hidden ambition, and planted the idea that would eventually bring the monarchy's most protected household office into open conflict. Sophie had been supervising preparations for a crown Thanksgiving ceremony when the restricted circlet was brought forward. The ceremony was a formal royal service of gratitude, while the circlet was a private ceremonial crown kept outside normal public use. As guardian, she had to approve every change involving restricted regalia and make sure no royal used such objects beyond Charles's written instructions. That duty mattered because one unauthorized decision could turn tradition into a personal claim of power. Camilla approached her during the rehearsal and asked for the circlet to be released for a separate royal reception. The Queen spoke calmly, almost casually, but the request crossed a clear line. Sophie refused. She explained that the piece had already been reserved for a future emergency ceremony and could not be reassigned by the reigning consort. The silence sharpened immediately. Camilla noticed the 2 equerries and senior dressers standing nearby. Equerries were royal officers who assisted senior family members with ceremonial and official duties. Their presence made the refusal feel public, even inside a private rehearsal. The Queen Consort turned back to Sophie and asked, "Are you correcting the Queen?" Sophie held her ground. "I am protecting the King's instruction." Charles entered moments later and sensed the tension before anyone explained it. The King listened as Camilla repeated her request, and Sophie stated the rule. He did not hesitate. He supported the trusted confidant and ordered the circlet returned to its case. That decision protected procedure, but it left his wife exposed before staff who had heard every word. Puitanesque. Camilla said nothing as the case was closed. That evening, she requested a full description of the guardian's powers from the private secretary through a documented household inquiry. The request revealed that the rejection had not faded. It had become an investigation. Sophie later learned from an internal security note that someone had attempted to access the incapacity register, the confidential list showing which royal objects could be released if the sovereign became unable to act. The attempt failed, but the timing was impossible to ignore. Before leaving the rehearsal, Camilla had paused beside Sophie and touched the closed case. "No position should place you above the Queen," she said quietly. Looking back, Sophie finally understood. This was never about one circlet. It was about removing the woman who had dared to say no. With the true trigger exposed, Charles could no longer keep the next conversation polite. Charles summoned Camilla back before the day was over. This time, There were no papers arranged neatly between them, and no carefully prepared opening remarks. The king stood beside the fireplace while his wife remained near the door, each waiting for the other to retreat first. He had discovered the earlier inquiries, the attempted register access, and the announcement date. She had expected resistance but not an accusation. Within moments, the disagreement became the most personal confrontation of their marriage. Charles broke the silence first. He asked whether Camilla had instructed household officials to prepare a transfer announcement before receiving his consent. A transfer announcement was the formal notice used to confirm that a royal duty or position had passed from one person to another. Its early preparation mattered, because it made the change appear almost settled before the monarch had even agreed. Camilla admitted authorizing preliminary work. The Queen argued that she believed her husband would understand why the office should belong to his wife, rather than his sister-in-law. To her, the matter was simple. She carried the highest female rank in the household, yet Sophie controlled a protected authority the consort could not touch. Charles rejected that argument at once. He said Sophie's independence was not a flaw in the office. It was the reason the position existed. The trusted confidant stood outside the marriage at the center of the crown, which meant she could protect royal instructions without pressure from either spouse. Rank was not the point. Distance was. Camilla's restraint finally broke. She accused Charles of defending everyone except her whenever tradition became painful. The queen consort reminded him that she had carried royal burdens, faced public judgment, and stood beside him through years of pressure. Yet every time she reached the inner circle, another invisible barrier appeared. The king stepped closer and placed the prepared announcement on the mantle. "Were you seeking my confidence?" he asked, "or planning to make refusal impossible?" Camilla did not answer immediately. That silence told Charles more than denial could have done. Then she revealed, through notes from a recorded private briefing, that one senior official had told her the Guardian could influence which royal acted for the sovereign during a medical emergency. The claim was explosive. It suggested Sophie could shape temporary power inside the family. Charles understood the trap. Someone had exaggerated the office's reach to provoke rivalry between the two women. If Camilla challenged Sophie, both could be weakened, leaving another hand free to guide the crisis. The monarch took the unsigned announcement and tore it in half. He ordered every discussion of the transfer suspended. Camilla turned toward the door, but paused before leaving. She warned him that Sophie had not revealed everything. One hidden authority, she said, could change the future balance of the family. The accusation struck harder than Charles expected, because the original mandate contained one power even he rarely discussed. The Guardian's position was never designed to rival the monarch. It was designed to protect the crown when the monarch could not protect it personally. That distinction suddenly became crucial. Charles ordered the original mandate reviewed line by line, and what emerged explained why Camilla had become so determined to claim the office. Sophie did not control succession or government. Yet during a royal incapacity, she could prevent any family member, including the Queen, from taking control of restricted ceremonial authority. Charles read the central clause alone and slowly removed his glasses. The mandate was the written document defining the Guardian's powers and limits. It allowed Sophie to seal private regalia rooms, stop unauthorized ceremonial substitutions, and make sure emergency royal appearances followed the king's written wishes. Those powers mattered because a moment of illness could create confusion, and confusion inside the monarchy could quickly become a struggle for control. The office had also been separated from the sovereign's spouse for one clear reason. Emotional pressure inside a royal marriage could not be allowed to shape emergency decisions. Charles finally understood why Camilla saw the rule as a judgment. To the queen consort, Sophie's independence did not look protective. It looked like proof that her loyalty was still being questioned. Charles summoned Sophie and asked the question neither of them wanted to hear. Had she ever used the emergency authority against Camilla? Sophie stiffened. The trusted confidant was hurt that the king could even suspect her of targeting his wife, but she answered directly. She had activated the power once, only once, and she had done it to protect him. Sophie explained through a documented security account that, during an earlier health scare, an aide requested private regalia for a royal event Charles had never approved. The request appeared urgent and official, yet it carried no written authority from the monarch. She blocked the release and kept the matter private to avoid embarrassing the family. Charles asked who had instructed the aide. Sophie hesitated, then disclosed that the request followed a private conversation with Camilla. The queen may not have known approval was missing, and the trusted confidant refused to accuse her without proof. Still, the connection was impossible to ignore. The final discovery changed everything. Charles found that the official now encouraging Camilla to claim the guardian's position was the same person involved in that earlier unauthorized request. One hand had been guiding both crises. The king pressed the intercom button and ordered the official removed from every crown household discussion. The crown household was the private structure of staff and advisors supporting the monarch's duties. He then told Sophie her position would remain untouched while the matter was examined. The decision protected her, but it left Camilla exposed. The palace system she trusted had turned her demand into evidence against her. By nightfall, the announcement had vanished from every schedule, yet the damage was already spreading through the family. The consequences arrived without ceremony. Meetings were removed from Camilla's calendar. Staff members who had helped prepare the transfer were reassigned. Access to the guardian's records was suspended, and the proposal disappeared as though it had never existed. Yet inside the palace, everyone knew what had happened. The queen consort had challenged a protected boundary and lost. For Sophie, the victory brought no relief. For Charles, the decision brought no peace. And for Camilla, silence became more painful than public defeat. Charles ordered a private administrative review before the next morning. The review was an internal examination of how the proposal had been prepared, who had approved each step, and whether palace rules had been broken. The king made one point clear. Camilla would keep her public rank and normal duties, but she would have no authority over the guardian's office. Sophie was told to continue her schedule as though nothing had changed. The trusted confidant understood why. Any sudden absence would confirm division inside the family and invite questions the palace was not ready to answer. Behind the scenes, however, security around her ceremonial responsibilities was quietly strengthened. Camilla returned to her sitting room and immediately noticed something missing from her red box. The red box was the official case used to carry confidential royal papers and daily briefings. A planned update on emergency ceremonies had been removed. When she demanded its return, an aide told her Charles had personally restricted it. The answer cut deeper than any argument. Camilla dismissed her attendance and sat alone. She removed a brooch Sophie had once given her and held it for several seconds. The gift had once represented respect between them. Now it felt like proof of everything that had broken. The queen consort placed it inside a drawer and chose not to wear it to dinner. Sophie carried a different pain. During a private conversation with Edward, she admitted that guilt had replaced relief. The trusted confidant had done nothing wrong, yet her loyalty had become a weapon inside another marriage. He reminded her that surrendering the office would not heal Charles and Camilla. It would only reward the pressure that created the crisis. Charles soon received worse news. A household secretary told him through a documented briefing that copies of the cancelled announcement had already reached 3 outside communications advisors. The king understood the danger immediately. A private wound could become a public battle over whether Camilla truly belonged at the heart of the monarchy. Dinner offered no escape. Charles sat opposite Camilla and tried to speak. She lifted her glass but did not drink. The king began one sentence, then stopped when his wife looked away. The silence could not survive exposure. Sophie knew it. Before the palace could contain the story, she walked toward Camilla's private rooms alone. carrying no files and asking for no witnesses. There was no king between them now. No secretary, no ceremonial rulebook, and no official language to hide behind. Sophie entered Camilla's sitting room, knowing that one careless sentence could deepen the division forever. The queen remained beside the window and did not invite her to sit. For several moments, neither woman spoke. Then Sophie placed the brooch Camilla had hidden earlier on the table, revealing that an attendant had returned it and that she understood exactly what its removal meant. Sophie had requested the meeting because the conflict was no longer only about authority. It had become a wound inside Charles's household, threatening the trust holding the family together. Camilla agreed on one condition: no aides, no written record, and no official account of what was said. This would not be a palace negotiation. It would be two women speaking without protection. Camilla looked at the brooch and finally admitted the truth. She had not only wanted the guardian's duties, the queen consort wanted proof that the crown trusted her without limits. After years of judgment, resistance, and careful acceptance, one forbidden office had come to represent every door she believed was still closed. Sophie did not soften her answer. The trusted confidant said trust without boundaries was not trust at all. It was surrender. Her position existed to protect the sovereign even from pressure created by love, fear, loyalty, or panic. That mattered because the people closest to Charles could influence him most when he was weakest. Camilla turned toward her and asked the question she had been avoiding. Did Sophie believe she was dangerous to the king? Sophie held her gaze. No, I believe any of us could become dangerous if no one were allowed to refuse us. The words landed without cruelty, which made them harder to reject. Sophie then disclosed, through the private conversation itself, that she had already offered Charles her resignation after the confrontation. The king refused it. He believed accepting would reward the effort to weaken the office and prove that pressure could remove anyone who defended its limits. Camilla's anger began to give way. She acknowledged that the official advising her had repeatedly warned that Sophie was preparing to control royal decisions during Charles's illness. The queen now understood that fear had been fed until suspicion became ambition. Camilla reached for the brooch and fastened it back onto her dress. The gesture was small, but the meaning was clear. She said she would withdraw the claim herself rather than let the king announce her defeat. Sophie nodded, though neither woman pretended the hurt had vanished. Their agreement changed everything inside the palace. Outside, however, the first headline was already being printed. By morning, the conflict no longer belonged to the royal family. It belonged to breakfast television, newspaper editors, palace crowds, and millions of people deciding what the dispute revealed about the crown. The leaked announcement draft confirmed that Camilla had attempted to replace Sophie in a restricted position. Yet the public did not respond with one voice. Some saw ambition, others saw insecurity. Many saw a queen still fighting to be accepted. The monarchy now needed one clear response, before speculation became permanent judgment. Charles moved before the argument could grow beyond control. Palace communications staff issued a formal confirmation that no transfer had taken place, and that Sophie remained guardian of the crown household with the king's complete confidence. The communications office was the team responsible for presenting royal decisions to the public. Its words mattered because silence would allow anger, rumor, and private grudges to define the story instead. The king also refused to authorize personal attacks against Camilla. He ordered every official response to separate a serious mistake from deliberate betrayal. The monarch believed she had crossed a protected boundary, but he would not let the palace protect itself by destroying his wife. That distinction was difficult, yet essential. Authority had to be defended without turning punishment into humiliation. The public verdict arrived anyway. One major newspaper appeared with 2 empty ceremonial chairs on its front page, beneath the headline, "The Position the Queen Could Not Take." Outside Buckingham Palace, a small crowd gathered beside the gates. One woman held a handmade sign reading, Loyalty does not need a crown. While television cameras captured tourists debating whether Sophie's quiet service had finally exposed the difference between duty and ambition. Sophie watched the coverage beside Edward and felt no triumph. The trusted confidant became visibly uncomfortable as commentators turned her into Camilla's rival. She asked her office to release no victory statement and told her husband that protecting the crown should never require celebrating another woman's pain. Edward agreed, but he warned that public sympathy could become dangerous if others used it to deepen the family divide. Camilla faced the same headlines at breakfast. The Queen Consort pushed the newspaper away without reading the second page. Charles placed his hand over hers, making one promise without words. Public judgment would not become private cruelty. The palace then announced through a documented inquiry summary that the advisor who encouraged the transfer had permanently left Crown service. Investigators found repeated efforts to provoke fear between Camilla and Sophie. Camilla responded with a brief recorded statement. She confirmed that she had withdrawn the request and fully recognized Sophie's authority. The crisis was contained, but not yet healed. Charles summoned the family for one final decision. The headlines had delivered their judgment, but only the king could decide what lesson the monarchy would carry forward. Charles did not end the crisis with punishment, exile, or another dramatic announcement. He ended it by naming the truth each person had been avoiding. Camilla had mistaken unrestricted access for acceptance. Sophie had carried responsibility so quietly that others failed to understand its burden. And the king had allowed an essential boundary to remain unexplained, until resentment grew around it. In the final family meeting, he chose neither humiliation nor compromise. He chose clarity and made certain the same conflict could never happen again. Charles gathered Camilla, Sophie, Edward, William, and Catherine in the same private room where the original demand had been presented. No one needed reminding what had happened there. The guardian of the crown household was the independent office created to protect the monarch's written wishes during an emergency. Its purpose was not to reward rank. It was to stop personal pressure from controlling the crown when the sovereign was vulnerable. The king confirmed that the office would remain separate from the monarch's spouse and continue under Sophie's care. He looked toward Camilla, but he did not speak for her. This was the queen's moment to decide whether she would defend her pride or protect the family. Camilla met Sophie's eyes and withdrew her claim in front of everyone. The queen consort admitted that the restriction did not diminish her position. It protected the monarchy from confusion, fear, and influence at the worst possible moment. Her words came through the recorded minutes of the private family meeting, leaving no doubt about what she had accepted. Sophie answered without triumph. The trusted confidant said she had never wanted power over another royal and would use the office only when Charles's written instructions required it. Edward watched her with quiet relief, while Catherine understood the restraint behind those words. William saw something else, a weakness in the system that could never be allowed to return. Charles took the cancelled transfer proposal, placed it into the fireplace, and waited until the final page burned. The king then returned the original appointment seal to Sophie. The seal was the formal symbol confirming her authority under the mandate. She accepted it carefully, knowing the office had survived only because she had refused to misuse it. William supported a revised charter, defining every emergency power in plain language. The future king wanted no advisor to exaggerate the guardian's reach again. Catherine backed the reform, while Edward agreed that all requests involving restricted regalia should require 2 independent approvals. The advisor who created the rivalry was permanently dismissed. Access rules were rewritten. The loopholes were closed. Camilla and Sophie left through the same doorway. The hurt had not vanished, and they were not suddenly close. Yet the queen paused and allowed the trusted confidant to walk beside her rather than behind. The forbidden position remained where it belonged, not as a prize above the queen, but as a shield beside the king. Charles preserved his marriage without sacrificing the institution. Sophie kept the role because she never abused it. Camilla lost the claim, but regained dignity by withdrawing it herself. Ambition had finally yielded to trust. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.